All right, so we're all worried that AI is going to take our jobs, but thing is, as you've probably heard, it's not AI that's going to take your job, but someone who can use it better than you. So it's really important to be across the technology. Now, to begin with, everyone needs to be really good at prompting. And the good news is there's plenty of resources out there to learn about it. Now, one of the best is Google's Prompting Essentials course, which takes about 8 hours to complete. Now, just in case you don't have 8 hours or you just want to learn the latest terminology and techniques very quickly, I took it, and in this video, I'm going to distill down my key learnings. So if you're ready, let's get to it. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. First, I'll take you through Google's prompting framework, which talks about tasks, context, references, evaluating a prompt, and then iterating on it. Secondly, I'll share with you some of the most powerful prompting techniques like multimodal prompting, prompt chaining, chain of thought, tree of thought, chain of density, and even meta prompting. And finally, we'll talk about the latest craze right now, which is AI agents and how they're being used in practice. Now, I've added timestamps to the description below just in case you want to jump to a specific section. All right, let's kick things off with Google's prompting framework. All right, so Google's prompting framework has 5 key elements: task, context, references, evaluate, and iterate. Now, the way I like to think about it is the first thing we need to do is consider how we craft our prompt, how we put it together. And what Google says is you need to consider 3 things. Firstly, the task itself. What are you asking AI to do? Secondly, the context. So providing a little bit of information around that task to help the AI provide you with a better result. And then thirdly, references. So think of references as a little bit like examples. You can say to the AI, hey, for example, I would like you to do something like this, or I would prefer you not to do something like that, right? You can give it examples of what you like and what you don't like. And don't worry, I'll show you how it all works in a minute. So that's the first step. We need to craft the prompt, and we craft it by considering those 3 things: task, context, references. Then the next element of the framework is to evaluate, right? You're going to look at the result, you're going to read through it and make sure it actually makes sense and it's what you're after. And then lastly, there is iterate. Just like in Agile, where we're always improving, you want to be doing the same thing with your prompt and the results that the AI is giving you. So you're going to iterate, you might adjust the prompt, evaluate, and go through the cycle again and again and again until you get what you want. So let's put it into practice, and let me give you an example. So let's imagine I create this prompt. Please give me 3 ideas for how I might facilitate my next team sprint retrospective in a fun way that keeps everyone engaged. Now, that's a pretty good start, and it's probably going to give me some decent results, but I can make this prompt even stronger by adding 2 things. The first is I can add a persona. So for example, I might begin the prompt with, you're a world-class agile coach who has facilitated over 200 retrospectives. Now, what that's going to do is give the AI some perspective, and it'll give me even better results than I had at the beginning. Now, second, I can specify the output format. So at the end of the prompt, I could add, please present the answer in bullet points with timing and facilitation steps. That way I'm not just getting ideas, but I'll get them in a usable format that I can take to my next sprint retro. Now that might give us some good results, but the problem is not all the ideas might be appropriate. For example, it's come back with retrospective ideas of having everyone in the office. Problem is, a lot of my team works from home. Some of them are even distributed across different countries. So this is where context comes into it. We need to provide the AI with a bit more context so that it can give us a more appropriate result. So I might update the script and say, give me 3 ideas for how I might facilitate my next team retrospective in a fun way that keeps everyone engaged. Some of my team will be in the office during the session, while others will be joining remotely from home or other locations. Finally, we can strengthen with references. And like I said before, what Google means here is examples, both of what you want and what you don't want. So I might say, I want you to draw inspiration from the liberating structures 1, 2, 4, all format. And here's the link for reference. And I slot the link in. Also, please don't suggest the format mad, sad, glad, because we've done that many times before. So what's important here is to use what's called a transitional phrase. So for example, I said, here's the link for reference, and that tells the AI what it obviously needs to refer to. I could have said, here's an example, or consider this information below when answering. You can also include headings to make it clearer. So for example, I might put in the heading good example and bad example underneath. Now, if you want to be a little bit more technical, you can even use XML tags. So for example, you can see here, I put the good example in the XML element positive reference and the one that I don't want it to use in the element negative reference. So in summary, when crafting your prompt, remember, firstly, think of the task. And as part of the task, consider the persona and the output format that you'd like it to be in, add in the necessary context, and lastly, provide it with references of what you want and what you don't want. Okay, so the next step after you've crafted your prompt is to evaluate the result. Now, of course, it's always important to double check what AI has created. It can sound very confident, but it can make things up. So always look through it. Does it make sense? Is it factually correct? If it said a few things, are there credible sources for where it got that information from? So evaluate it. And based on your evaluation, move on to the next step and iterate. So there you have it. That's Google's prompting framework. Next, let's cover prompting techniques. All right, now let's talk prompting techniques. And these are tools that you can layer on top of the framework to get even better results. The first one is multimodal prompting. And all this means is combining the text with other artifacts like an image, spreadsheet, or maybe a document. So for example, I might say, act as a facilitator. Here's an image of the sticky notes we captured during our discovery workshop. Summarize the top 3 themes you notice and suggest the next activity I should run with the team. Or I could also add multiple items, such as, in this prompt, I might say, act as a world-class Agile coach. I'm sharing a burn down chart from our last sprint, along with a CSV export of all the sprint tasks. Analyze both the chart and the tasks and suggest 3 facilitation activities I could run in my next retrospective to address the issues you see. So multimodal is really just about making the AI smarter by giving it more context in different formats, not just in plain text. Now, second is prompt chaining. And this is where you build upon the output of the last prompt. This is different from the iteration step in Google's prompting framework. The iteration step there was more about refining the prompt until you're happy with it. But prompt chaining, on the other hand, is about creating a new prompt that leverages the output of the previous one. So for example, I could start by asking, generate an outline for a 2-day quarterly planning workshop. Then once I have that outline, I might follow up with a new prompt and say, now take the outline and expand it into a detailed facilitation plan with timings and activities. And then maybe, again, I might put another prompt in and say, rewrite that facilitation plan as an email invitation I could send to my team so they know what to expect. So the idea is each step builds upon the last, moving you closer to the finished product. Thirdly is chain of thought prompting, or COT for short. This is where you ask the AI to show its reasoning. Now, it sounds odd, but when you prompt the AI for its thinking steps, you actually get more accurate and thoughtful outputs. It also lets you see what it's been considering and what it's been thinking, how it got to the result, so you can potentially challenge it or maybe add more context that it didn't consider. So for example, I might say, you're an Agile coach. I've attached a screenshot of our last sprint retrospective whiteboard. Using that as a reference, suggest 3 ways the team could improve. For each suggestion, briefly explain your reasoning in 3 to 5 bullet points, tie it to what you see on the board, for example, themes, votes, blockers, and include one experiment we can try next sprint. So the benefit of chain of thought is you don't just get an answer, you get the why, which makes it easier to spot gaps and fine-tune the result. All right, fourth is tree of thought prompting, or TOT for short. So this builds upon the chain of thought, but instead of asking the AI to follow one reasoning path, we ask it to branch out into multiple options, almost like a decision tree. Now, why does this matter? Well, because sometimes there's more than one good approach, and you want the AI to show you the alternatives before you decide which one to run with. So for example, I might say, you're an Agile coach. Suggest 3 different retrospective formats for a hybrid team. For each format, explain the reasoning, the benefits, and the risks. At the end, recommend which option is best suited if we only have 45 minutes. So you can see here that each different retrospective format is a different branch in that tree of thought. Now you can also have the AI play multiple personas or roles at the same time. So for example, I might say, imagine a panel of experts discussing how to improve team morale after a tough sprint. The panel includes a Scrum Master focused on team health, a product owner focused on managing stakeholder expectations, an Agile coach focused on long-term growth. And here, each expert propose one improvement idea and explain their reasoning. Then summarize the top 3 combined actions they agree on. So you can see here, the beauty is AI considers different options and from different perspectives at the same time, and then brings you back the best results. And the last I'll take you through is meta prompting, which is my favorite. So this is where you don't just give the AI a prompt, you actually ask it to improve the prompt itself. Think of it as like turning the AI into your own prompting coach. So for example, I might say, I'm considering writing the prompt, give me ideas for improving my sprint reviews. Please rewrite this prompt to make it more specific, structured, and likely to generate a useful output. Then run the improved prompt. And if you're interested, this is what it said. I want to improve the effectiveness of my sprint reviews. Please provide a structured set of recommendations organized by themes. For example, stakeholder engagement, storytelling, team involvement, feedback collection, and flow of the meeting. For each theme, give 2 to 3 concrete, actionable ideas that Scrum Masters or Agile coaches can apply immediately. Where relevant, include short examples of how the idea could play out in practice, and with a sample 60-minute sprint review agenda that integrates these improvements. So you can see that's going to create a much better result than just asking, give me some ideas to improve my next sprint review. So meta prompting is really about leveling up your prompting skills by letting the AI teach you better ways to ask. And personally, my favorite way to use this is to actually flip the script entirely and ask AI what questions I should be asking. So for example, I might say, given the context of what you know about me and my team so far, what questions should I be asking you that I haven't already? And if you haven't done this before, you should try it. You get some really great results. All right, so as a final part of this video, let's cover the latest craze in AI right now, and that is AI agents. All right, before we wrap up this video, let's talk about AI agents. So what are they? Well, think of them as like a digital assistant that can autonomously go do tasks for you online. So for example, imagine you're planning a holiday. It could go and research different places to go, places to stay, and activities to take, and then bring it back to you. Now, there's a few ways that I like to use AI agents. One example is to use it to simulate conversations. So for example, if you're going for an interview, you can have it simulate the interview questions that you might be asked. For example, let me show you. If I go to ChatGPT on my phone and I enable voice mode, I say, hey, could you please be a hiring manager for a Scrum Master role and ask me questions that might come up in that interview, and then give me feedback after I give my answers.
Absolutely. I can step into that hiring manager role for you. Let's dive in. So, Richard, first question, can you tell me about a time when your Scrum team faced a major roadblock during a sprint and what steps you took as a Scrum Master to help the team overcome it? Feel free to answer and I'll give you some feedback afterward.
So it's as simple as that. Of course, you can have other types of conversations as well, and it can be really helpful. A second way is there's an AI agent feature in ChatGPT as well. You just go off to the plus sign and then select AI agent, type in your task, and it'll go off and do things for you. The third example I'll give you is to use tools like Flowwise or N8N, where you can put together a workflow, not just for one agent, but for multiple agents to work together. So for example, I could have a virtual AI software team where I've got a business analyst AI agent, engineering AI agent, and maybe a QA AI agent, and have them work together and produce software for me. But that's a story for another day. So if you want to hear more about AI and Agile and how they come together, let me know in the comments and I'll create more videos on this type of content. All right, so we've covered Google's prompting framework, some prompting techniques, and AI agents. Now, if there are any particular topics you would like me to cover in these videos, just let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.